Alice was putting things in order on the mezzanine, almost through tears. Whatever thing you pick up, there is something connected with each one. Old shoes, carefully filled with newspapers and still packed in their original boxes. An artificial Christmas tree folded into 3 pieces. A box, sabers, garlands that still managed to shine in the hands of the husband. Cardboard treasure with Christmas decorations, ski equipment. She froze for a second. Treacherous tears appeared in her gray eyes, not wanting to dry. Children should not see her melancholy and hopelessness. Away with sadness. We need to get together. I remembered my mother's voice. The top closet is a collection of unnecessary rubbish. I will definitely get there and throw everything from there in the trash. Didn't get there, didn't get out, did not make it. Not only did the mischievous neighbor like to joke about Alice's father that she was born from a visiting young man, but also her mother burned out within a week. The doctor's verdict sounded ominous. Awakening of an "You came to us too late, my dear. Severe internal bleeding. We couldn't do anything, even on the operating table. Time was lost." Well, so the surgeon in the blue uniform looked with pity at the girl folded on the couch near the operating unit and hurried to disappear out of sight into the labyrinths of the hospital corridor. Alice was left an absolute orphan. Now she had no one in this world. Yes, my mother sometimes complained of stomach pain, but it came as a shock to Alice that this would be a death sentence. Stern, formidable, she raised and pulled her daughter until she was 20 years old, almost taught her, and also managed to keep order in the courtyard of their old 5-story building. First as the best janitor in the entire area, then as a worker. So she proved herself in all guises, so that all the authorities were always calm in this house. Neither the tenants, nor the electricians, nor the plumbers will spoil you. Sandra will quickly bring everyone to their senses. My mother was a homegrown intellectual with a secondary school education. I spent all my free time reading books avidly. Fortunately, the social library in the neighboring house diligently sowed the reasonable, good, and eternal to the masses. She wrote competently and expressed her thoughts. In life, you can't tell which one is from the wipers. She knew household needs by heart. The entire large community service team literally prayed for her. I got a 2-room apartment at my place of work just 5 years ago. Before that, I huddled in the service closet for the janitors with my daughter. And when a lonely old woman died on the first floor, they provided her with housing for many years of efforts. Now Alice has got her apartment. The girl graduated from school. Well, easily entered the Pedagogical Institute and dreamed of teaching children English language and literature. When Sandra passed away, she had just finished her 4th year. There was still practice at school ahead, and then defense of my diploma. It was just unclear what to live on now. How the mother made ends meet with her salary, and even dressed her daughter decently, was a mystery to Alice. The stash in the bookcase, in a metal box, ran out almost immediately. It's good that the residents chipped in for the funeral expenses, and the communal office workers took care of the rest. After sitting for a month on cereals, pasta, potatoes, and tea with sugar, Sandra always made food supplies from her salary. Alice clearly understood. She urgently needed to look for some kind of work. She would not last long without new cash injections. A month later, she began a 6-month teaching practice. This means she can only work in the evenings. How can one not remember how many successful businessmen and movie stars began their careers? The answer lay on the surface. Become a waitress in some cafe or bar. A suitable place was found surprisingly quickly. At the favorite beer bar, which makes money from broadcasting sporting events accompanied by beer drinks and light snacks. A waitress has just quit. The lively girl's patience ran out, and all because the audience in the hall, with a huge TV on the entire wall, showed their joy over goals scored or grief over missed goals in a unique way. In an impulse, some red-haired fellow would pour the remaining beer directly into the round recess in the center of the table and let a small aquarium fish swim into it. Another character could kick a waitress walking past a table with a full tray. The third subject, at the sight of the impending failure of his favorite team, generally pushed food from the table, jumped up angrily, and began to cut circles around other tables, not allowing the worker with the next portions of the foamy catalyst of emotions to freely move around the hall. The director of the establishment saw the outrage, but their bar was on the outskirts of the city. The contingent in it was made up of local workers. They didn't seriously damage the property. They made some noise and then peacefully went home. Even fights happened only a couple of times and ended at the very beginning with a couple of slaps in the face without harming the strong male health. Alice was told about the vacancy at the favorite bar by the same neighbor Nura, who knew all the news in the area before the police and local gossips. She grabbed the girl at the entrance and sarcastically whispered in her ear, "You seem to be looking for a job that wasn't dusty. So I found you a position. Do you know the favorite bar? There today, the waitress ran away straight from her shift. Go and talk to him. The director is a normal guy. He won't offend." Favorite greeted Alice with the clink of glass beer mugs. In the distance, in an empty hall without visitors, a muffled whisper could be heard. Dishwashers and cleaning ladies were talking among themselves. The latter had just frantically polished the floor to a perfect shine. But curiosity got the better of him. And where did our director gallop to? Does he think that an hour before opening, he will find some fool to take his place? Nobody wants to put up with this tipsy coddle. I told him so many times, take my sister as a waitress, but he refused. He says, she's old. Where have you seen a woman ride off a scrap at 47 years old? Let him now suffer without a waitress. I also offered him my sister. She's only 40 years old. And he refuses. He only wants a younger girl for our hot guy clients so that their blood will boil from her too. Behind the wall, two young guys quickly took pizza dough pieces out of cardboard boxes, then pushed them into a large machine. A new acquisition in Alex's pride. He coated the paid test bases with mayonnaise and then put fillings on them. Sometimes with sausage, sometimes with fish, sometimes just with grated cheese and olives. Alex didn't have a large kitchen here. The hottest option is piping hot pizza. For snacks, there is an endless amount of beans, industrially prepared baked goods, dried and smoked fish, chips, dried squid rings, spices, small fish in bags, nuts sprinkled with spices, cheeses, sliced smoked sausage, toasted bread, crackers with salt and pepper. It's impossible to list everything. At the favorite bar, they didn't bother with plates, forks, spoons, and knives, and included all the disposable plastic utensils they used on their customers' bill. Another thing is beer mugs. There's a whole collection of them lined up on the shelf above them. The owner imported this glass goods from all the cities where it was brought. Exquisite options are for VIP clients. The owner brought them from Prague and Munich, which is simpler. He took them here in souvenir shops. It was in this splendor that I met the waitress on my doorstep for the first time in a bar for sports fans. Only not a single bartender out of the 3 working here has yet been there. They'll be there by the start of the shift. They are the elite among the staff. The girl went up the steps, resolutely pushed the door and froze, her eyes adjusting to the twilight in the huge hall. Everyone present in the establishment, like dummies, turned their heads towards the open doorway. In front of them stood a young girl of average height, a fine figure, an inquisitive look of dark gray eyes, a light brown fluffy tail of hair, carelessly collected with a bright hairpin that had slipped down a little. Light summer jeans, a t-shirt with an intricate print, light white sneakers on her feet. That, in fact, is the whole portrait of the stranger. "Oh, good afternoon," Alice said loudly. "Can I see Alex, your director?" "Why do you need him?" Kate responded smartly. "He's not here now. He's gone on business. I'm in no particular hurry." Alice chuckled. How is that?" The curious women immediately perked up. "If I don't get a job here tomorrow, then I'll go around the world with my bags," Alice calmly explained to them. And there was so much bitterness in her words that Kate and her interlocutor somehow immediately forgot all the barbs, propped their cheeks with their hands like women, and, waiting for confession, stared with all 4 eyes at the girl. Everyone craned their necks to hear better. "Yes, I won't tell you anything particularly interesting, my dears. A student at a pedagogical university became an orphan a little over a month ago. I'll have to go to practice in the morning soon, and with my scholarship, I can only pay for utilities and then buy bread and milk for myself, nothing more. I live 2 blocks from here. If your boss hires me, I will try not to let any of you down." Everyone turned their heads at the sound of the door opening again at the same time. Alex himself squeezed into the establishment, again with a cardboard box in his hands. "Did you bring new glasses and new mugs again?" Kate called out to him in a familiar way. They had known each other for more than 1 year. Once upon a time, in her youth, the woman behind the counter in his first beer bar stood still 20 years ago. Then she gave up, she grew older, but she didn't want to part with her director in the least. So she followed her boss from bar to bar until they organized everything here from scratch, taking over the old diner from the careless owners. Kate crawled every centimeter in the hall on her elbows and knees, cleaned and cleaned. Everything around began to shine with purity and newness, and people flocked to favor it immediately after the opening. While you were traveling, we already found a new waitress for us. The intelligentsia is no match for me, but the girl is good. As a team, we have already conducted an interview with her. It's suitable. Let's take it. Today we'll check it in action, and we'll think about what and how. Let them work with Alice four-handed. That's how it began, the first working day in Alice's life, which even then determined her entire future fate. By the beginning of her teaching practice, Alice had already become so comfortable in the bar that the rest of the employees began to think that such an unpleasant young lady, a former waitress, had never worked in their friendly team. Discipline suddenly rose in the hall. The regulars didn't pester the pretty Alice, and if someone tried to let go at first, the rest attacked him. Alex just chuckled approvingly, and Kate soon gave her summary. This Alice is a smart person. Men can sense a mile away that you can't play with her, you can't joke with her. 6 months flew by unnoticed in the work and worries about clients. Alice had completely settled into the bar, deftly carrying 4-liter mugs of drunken nectar in her hands at a time. At the same time, she never became familiar with the guests of the establishment, clearly keeping them at a safe distance. The New Year holidays flew by like a comet across the starry sky. The new year has come. By the beginning of February, Alice had completely submitted her teaching practice reports. 2 state exams were behind us, and I received permission from the dean's office to write and then defend my thesis. Everyone was looking forward to the start of the Winter Olympics. It's no joke. The country won the right to welcome athletes from all continents on its lands. The most avid fans bought tickets for matches and competitions in Real Madrid in advance. The favorites' regulars couldn't wait to be spectators here at the bar. In an atmosphere of general rejoicing, mugs of beer are pushed together. It was impossible to watch the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games without intense emotions and multiple libations. The beer flowed like a river. Passions were running high. Everyone at the bar tables jumped up with cheers. It seemed that no one could sit at home that evening. The favorite was crowded. Alice barely had time to take orders and run from the bar to the customers. At the peak of noise and hubbub, the door of the bar swung open, and a new company, unfamiliar to the old-timers, burst in from the cold. Young, athletic-looking guys walked to the center in a crowd. There were still a few bath chairs empty there. Alice sighed with relief that at least their clever bartender could handle these guys on his own, and straightened a strand of brown hair that was sticking out of the ponytail gathered on the top of her head with a colored knitted elastic band. Precaria, who appeared from the back room, whispered trustingly, "If I survive this evening until closing time, consider me also an Olympic gold medalist. I don't have any strength anymore." The old cleaning lady winked at her slightly. "And look at the new ones. They don't look like the local aborigines at all. One is more beautiful than the... Where did such a handsome guy come to us?" Kate laughed contentedly, and Alice turned around to look at the handsome strangers. Her attention was immediately attracted by one of the strong, broad-shouldered guys. He slowly pulled beer from a tall glass with a colorful logo on the side, and carefully watched what was happening on the huge TV screen. Even from a distance, it was clear that he had dark brown eyes, almost like 2 glowing coals, and a short crew cut of dark, almost black hair. Okay, Alice thought, I've already forgotten when I paid attention to male representatives. But in a couple of months, I will only turn 21 years old. Between school and daily work, Alex never found a shift for me. I'm so soon turning into an old maid without a single sign of femininity, as if he had overheard her thoughts. The guy suddenly turned around and looked at her point blank without looking away for several seconds, smiled warmly, and only then answered the question of the guy sitting next to it. Monday, since the car stalled, it was taken to a service station. God himself ordered us to watch the opening ceremony of the Olympics here. Okay, Dennis, whatever you say. At least I warmed up a little while they waited for emergency services. The guys talked about something else more quietly and then ordered another glass of beer. The evening slowly rolled to a close. Alice's shift was ending. It wasn't the easiest, but the opening of the Olympics was worth it. Everyone was in high spirits. Alice completely forgot about the guy who had briefly attracted her attention, but somewhere in heaven, fate decreed otherwise. When the skiing competitions fell on schedule at the Olympics, he appeared in the bar again, but this time he was alone, without friends, and took a far table in the corner. With a gesture, he asked her to come over, ordered a mug of zero, as they called it, non-alcoholic beer, and a plate of nuts, croutons, and squid rings. While the skiing competition was going on, he did not take his eyes off the screen, and as he was leaving, he unexpectedly asked Alice a question. "Oh, what time do you finish work, Alice?" Her name was on her jacket. "Oh, I would like to accompany you if you don't mind." "Oh, I don't mind." For some reason, the waitress, who was already pretty tired by the end of the working day, became very embarrassed. Now she didn't care at all whether she looked worthy to communicate with a handsome man. It was surprising that the very person to whom she turned her feminine attention returned to favorites. "The shift will come to its logical conclusion in 40 minutes. I'll be waiting for you in the car at the entrance. Take it easy on your work. I'm not in a hurry." It took a minute to drive 2 blocks to her house. The night streets were already completely deserted. Only rare lanterns and the moon in the sky slightly illuminated the even rows of 5-story brick buildings and the bench at the entrance. They were silent, as if they had filled their mouths with water. The guy, only when he opened the car door for her, said, "Doe." I didn't have time to introduce myself. "I'm Dennis. I work as a ski coach. For now, you have to watch your favorite competitions on TV. My charges are small. Their victories are yet to come." They reached the apartment, where Dennis volunteered to accompany her in complete silence. Like partisans in the forest before an important mission. "I'm not asking for coffee," said the man. "Although I wouldn't refuse a cup of this invigorating drink. Why not?" Alice easily agreed, having already had enough of loneliness when you return to the warmth of home after work. At its epicenter, there is only the quiet hum of an old refrigerator, and then the same ancient TV was turned on for company, and no one for several months now. They entered the apartment at the same time, encountering bodies on the threshold. Alice used to read in some novel that there is such a passion when sparks fly between a man and a woman. Now she saw this process in reality, and she even seemed to be shocked by an electric shock when touched. "I went to put the kettle on in the kitchen. Sorry, I'm running your house here. You don't have a face. You're so tired after all that running around in the bar." 5 minutes later, 2 large cups of steaming instant coffee were already standing on the kitchen table. Nearby there were delicious sandwiches with fresh loaf and cheese to eat. Alice ran to the store just before work to get groceries. Dennis acted as if he had been preparing dinner for the 2 of them for many years, casually and habitually. After eating, he quickly rinsed the cups over the kitchen sink and placed them in the metal drainer. Then he began to say goodbye. "Oh, until the Olympics are over, I will meet you from work every day, and then we'll see." He was a quiet man in life and a very reliable husband, her Dennis. She had never known before what it was like to be behind an impenetrable stone wall. After meeting, they became close at lightning speed. Without long courtship, sweet bouquet, special romance. He became her first and only man. Yes, it remains that way to this day. A year after they met, curly-haired George, who looked like his father, was born, and 3 years later, fidgety and hooligan Mary was born. She and Dennis had already decided that, given their now common passion for alpine skiing with their offspring, they should stop for now, and suddenly their husband passed. How come? Just yesterday, a person hugged you, whispered tender words in your ear, lived side by side. Today, he is no more. Then, at the beginning of their family life, and then in between the births of children, Dennis and Alice spent all their free time in the mountains, either waiting for the first snow or seeing it off at the end of the season. Alice graduated from a pedagogical institute long ago, but she never had the opportunity to teach schoolchildren the rules of spelling and love of literature. At the Olympic Reserve School, where her husband worked, a vacancy became available for a teacher for a younger group of promising children who had come to their city from all over the country. Dennis's parents were doctors and epidemiologists. Mary took after their mother, blonde-haired, gray-eyed, with an outwardly calm and peaceful, a misleading impression. In fact, she was a collector of pranks, a lover of acute situations and adventures. Younger than my brother, she became rooted to skiing. People around joked that this girl was already born wearing ski boots and holding. Alice stroked the ski equipment lying on the mezzanine. My eyes stung with tears again. How ornate everything turned out then, a year ago. Stefan was born. She was on maternity leave with him again. Large, as Dennis laughed. They were once walking with a glass stroller in the park near a newsstand. The children lingered, and they liked the plastic toys on display. The talkative saleswoman even stuck her head out of the window, looking at their friendly family. And then she reached into the inner bin somewhere and pulled out a slightly tattered lottery ticket. "Young people, here I have a ticket from the instant lottery. You just need to rub the stripe and you will immediately see whether you have won or not. It's worth $1. Try your luck." Dennis and Alice laughed. "We don't believe in any of these lotteries." While they were chatting with the newspaper and magazine saleswoman, the children each chose a toy, but they were both very pleased with the purchase. They noisily rushed forward along Park Alley. Dennis said, "Stephen can't choose a gift for himself yet. The lottery is for him. Let's erase the stripe right here." Alice picked up the top layer of paper with the edge of her sharp nails, rubbed the surface, and faded blue numbers began to appear underneath. Having read what appeared on the piece of paper, she grinned and said only one word. "Oh, what's so funny?" Dennis reacted immediately. "We won $1 million. The children had already returned to the kiosk, having run all the way to the end and back. The curious owner of the paper treasures leaned out of the window. "Did you get any money? Up to $100? I can give it to you right here on the spot." "Yes, the number 100 also appears there," answered the confused Alice. "Only $1 million. No, go away." The aunt said in surprise. I immediately thought that I should have erased the stripe on this piece of paper with frayed edges that seemed so expensive. "If the win is big, you will have to go to the head office." In my memory, the largest amount was $25,000. One man here erased my ticket. He came to see me later and told me that everyone paid him according to his rank. Excited by the unexpected situation, Dennis and Alice, picking up the stroller with the sleeping Stefan and the older children, went home. There they looked again at the inscription on the ticket under a magnifying glass. There was no doubt about the numbers. Alice had to say the last weighty word on what to spend the money that had accidentally fallen and already safely received. The woman thought for a moment and then made her verdict. "Dennis, I love you very much. I am saddened by the longing for the snow-capped mountain peaks in your eyes. You and your students have already been to the resort this winter season. But I remember your dream to conquer the black slopes on Elbrus and with your wards. You cannot move further than the green and blue ones. They are all newbies, mostly. Ride the red trails a couple of times in your free time, and that's it. Adrenaline. This will not create a new melancholy. You have vacation in a week. Because of Stefan, I won't be able to keep you company. Go to Elbrus with one of the guys who are avid ski lovers." At first, Dennis was greatly puzzled by his wife's proposal, but his beloved woman was right. After suffering a serious injury 8 years ago, professional skiing in any competitive form was forever a thing of the past for him. At first, he was even thoroughly depressed by such a verdict from the doctors. Later, he was found by the management of the Olympic Reserve School in his hometown with an offer to switch to coaching. He still kept in close touch with his friends, fellow fans of the Krushi Mountains, covered with a cap of fluffy snow. He taught young boys and girls at the school. The pain from the consequences of the injury slowly subsided. He dreamed of riding at least once on a real daring ski trail. The whole family accompanied Dad to the train. Then we went to a pastry shop to buy our favorite cakes and drink tea in the evening in honor of the head of the house's vacation. Dennis always devoted so much time to his family that their joy for him was. Sometimes you need to let your husband and Dad go free skiing too. Alice then vaguely remembered the day when she received a call from the ski base on Elbrus. The Kabardians, who spoke English, spoke poorly 4 days after the arrival of Dennis and his friends. A company of young majors from among the golden elite of society appeared at the base. Young people went out to the ski slopes heavily drunk. When they announced the danger of avalanches, they just laughed in their instructor's face. "We are not afraid of anything. We went to the track and will continue to go. Today we just decided to try out your black one for the pros. We've all been skiers for years, but you're not our boss here." An elderly Kabardian, a guide instructor with many years of experience, himself a former athlete, just shouted when he heard this statement. "Do you even know how many of the same crazy people died near the Black Ski Road, as in permafrost, as in the grave? You can't even get corpses from there later. Moreover, the weather is predicted to be bad." No one listened to the words of the experienced mountain old-timer. They came down, drinking whiskey, patted each other on the shoulder, and poured out of the wooden frame into the street in a crowd. Dennis and his friends, already finishing their coffee and khachapuri at the table, exuding the aromas of fresh-baked goods, also soon rose from the table. Their plans included a short warm-up on an easy green track. Today they did not intend to drag the ski bull by the horns of danger. In the courtyard of the ski resort, everything was quiet and peaceful. A large shaggy dog was stomping around the booth, having just finished eating a sugar bone that the cook from the cafe had treated him to. Here, far from civilization, everything was different from somewhere in the Alps. Much simpler, without the frills of tourist services. It is at the foot of the two-headed giant Elbrus that guests of Kabardino-Balkaria can never be counted. And here, a little further from the village, is a place for experienced people, for our own people. An hour after breakfast, large, dense snow began to fall from the gray sky, which was beginning to frown and pout with causeless anger. Another hour later, the sky was completely clouded with black-purple clouds. The Kabardian quietly whispered something under his breath and moved his lips with annoyance. Then I couldn't stand it, dressed warmer and went towards the black ski slope. Having walked the entire way along the only trails he knew, half an hour later he stopped at the very top of the point of descent along the ski slope. On the side of the slope, he saw a flock of young people in bright red and yellow jackets. They fiddled around near the same place, then moving away, then approaching it again. The Kabardian cursed again, sensing something was wrong. His fears were not in vain. When he got to the unfortunate skiers, they vied with each other to explain to him that they had started an impromptu competition. They were descending in a line one after another, when the 3 guys riding in front of them, before their eyes, seemed to fall through the ground, go somewhere under the snow, as if it had never happened. I told you, I warned you that it's not good to climb onto a black branch, especially while drunk and in bad weather. There are plenty of treacherous crevices here. I'll go and call the guys who are skating on the green track. Maybe they'll say something. I'll call the rescuers at the central control post. They searched for the unlucky trio until dark the entire next day, despite the constant threat of an avalanche, but to no avail. Then the experts ended the expedition and ordered all tourists who had found shelter at a remote ski base to go down to the foot of Elbrus. It will be safer there if the snow mass accelerates at an exorbitant speed. Dennis couldn't find a place for himself and then decided to stay with the watchman. For some reason, he always blamed himself for not listening to the conversations of the major boys, for not stopping them when they were about to go to the black ski slope. A prickly cold burned inside him. It seemed that it was not other people's guys who disappeared on the damned ski track, but one of his charges from the Olympic Reserve School. He couldn't find a place for himself. He rushed about the warm interior of the log house, grabbing his skis, his boots, his cozy, warm down jacket. He went to the mountain at night before dawn. What was he looking for? Who was he hoping to pull out? What snow demons were he talking to? Nobody will ever know. That night, an avalanche descended from the peaks to the foot of Elbrus. Maybe it was she who caught it with her dense snowy edge, crushed it with her mass without stopping, rushing down, walked like a skating rink, pressed it to the slope, and then ran on to destroy everything in her path. The old Kabardian watchman could not then explain to Alice, who came to pick up her husband's body, what dark force had pulled him up onto the black path. He was found 3 hours after dawn, The cook was still embarrassed to look into his room and wake him up for breakfast. And in the room, the bed was already cold. Dennis lay in the fetal position with his arms and legs oddly crossed, pulled up to his stomach, near the supposed edges of the cleft. After the autopsy, the medical examiner wrote a report that his heart stopped. Alice, after reading this document, immediately remembered the words of Friedrich Nietzsche: "If you look at an abyss for a long time, then the abyss also looks into you." All the time after that, it seemed to her that the last hours of Dennis's life were terrible. This is how, magically, he appeared in her life, unobtrusively, without unnecessary words or explanations, sharply and quickly. He also left her life without saying goodbye, without explaining anything, without looking him in the eyes. When cleaning the mezzanine somehow has a bad effect on you, it's time to feed the children and put them to bed. Luckily, Stefan isn't being capricious today. The youngest son was soon to turn 2 years old. Recently, she found something for him to do that was so captivating that he could sit quietly for hours and not make a sound. The secret was simple. She placed a pair of her cleanly washed sneakers in front. She pulled out the lace from one of them and left it in the other. They say that children at 2 years old are still very young, that they technically understand where to go. Stefan enthusiastically inserted the lace into his sneaker and could sit with this toy for a couple of hours in a row. The most interesting thing was that, as a result of his diligence, the lace that was inserted into the shoe with his hands looked much neater than the lace inserted by Alice. Believe it or not, after feeding the trio pancakes with cottage cheese, drinking tea with ice cream and jam, Alice ordered everyone to brush their teeth before bed and go to bed. George, who had recently started first grade, and Mary, who was already accustomed to getting up early for kindergarten, were already accustomed to discipline. Quiet Stefan fell asleep only after reading a fairy tale. She taught him this herself. After that, winnings, which were almost not spent by Dennis, they lived on child benefits for now. And Alice wasn't the worst tutor, but she couldn't take on many students, renting Dennis's one-room apartment, the renovation of which in the family has long been called a long-term construction project, could be a good help. All the years of living together with her husband, Alice kept preventing him from selling the property. She joked that it would be useful to her eldest son when he got married. "We just need to freshen up your apartment, change the furnishings in your bachelor apartment to a more comfortable one, and a family nest will be ready for our handsome boy. He is growing like in fairy tales by leaps and bounds." For some reason, Alice also wasn't in the mood to sell both apartments, hers and Dennis's, and buy something newer and more spacious. She couldn't really explain this feeling, but they lived like this for all 7 years of marriage in an old 5-story building on the outskirts. There was again no money to continue renovations at the Dennis house. The money was inexorably melting away. Once again, the question of placing the youngest in kindergarten arose urgently, but as usual, there were no places. The golden autumn outside the window rustled with fallen leaves underfoot. Today's janitors were not as diligent as Sandra. At one time, foliage was collected reluctantly into large bags. Sanitary control prohibited burning. Therefore, at first they stood in a whole army along the walls of the house, and then once a week they were taken somewhere in a garbage truck. And now there is a whole line of them lined up near the dark brickwork. It seemed to Alice that some shadow was moving at its epicenter. Just in case, she called the cat. The woman often fed mongrels with tails. She even promised her children that someday they would definitely have a pet. "Hey, I'm going to the store. I can buy you some sausage." "Wait, Fluffy." Alice almost fainted from surprise when a clear voice rang out. Thank you, of course. If you're hungry, liverwurst is good, but I love big, juicy sausages, even if there is no place to cook them." "Who are you?" The woman called out to an unfamiliar creature. "You will be surprised, but I myself would really like to know who I really am," the girl answered. And this was just a girl, small in stature, with 2 pigtails, with slightly blind, but clearly not at all childish eyes. "Why are you walking around alone at night?" "Here on our outskirts, it is not safe. Walking around alone at night like this. I worked in a supermarket." The strange person answered ingenuously. It was not possible to steal anything on the sly. "Oh, do you live by stealing?" Alice was surprised once again. "Not the most promising income. This happens extremely rarely. just little things. If on some day you fail to earn something honestly, where do you live and with whom? He asked Alice. The answer plunged her into severe shock. Since the homeless people found me on the street, I have been living with them in a house prepared for demolition near the city station. The police know about our community, but for some reason they don't touch us. Maybe she's happy with the fact that we're at least a little under her watchful eye. I have amnesia. We have an old doctor there, also homeless. She was the one who gave me this diagnosis. She cured me after I was hit in the head from behind. I don't know who attacked me. I don't remember my name or where I lived before. The girl's trusting confession melted something in Alice's soul. She immediately asked herself a question. What would Dennis do now in her place? She knew the answer. He would try to somehow help the unfortunate victim of circumstances. For some reason, Alice was sure that there was not a drop of lies in the words of the night stranger. You know what? Let's go to the store. I need to stock up on milk and bread. And then to our home. I have 3 children. We'll be able to accommodate ourselves somehow. Oh, something is inconvenient. You do not know me at all. As a teacher of English language and literature, I cannot help but note her correctly and competently delivered speech. The girl is clearly not from the margins or from some slums which could have brought her into the lair of the homeless. What insidious forces and people had a hand in this? In the supermarket, Alice examined her find near the bags of fallen leaves in more detail. The clothes are poor but completely clean, without holes. She looked about 20 years old. It was in the darkness that the girl seemed almost like a child. The unfortunate creature gave away a look that was not at all childish. Some life experience was visible in him, and even a living mind was visible. This inquisitive gaze of green-brown eyes was not stupid. Apparently, in that past life, this girl wore glasses. In the brightly sacred hall of the supermarket, she busily checked the expiration dates on the milk and sour cream labels. True, I asked Alice for clarification. Some dates were filled with. Then I spent a long time looking at the labels on the bread, now packed in plastic wrap, accompanied by colorful drawings, the name of the baked goods and other information. Alice was surprised again. She chose baked goods only based on freshness, appearance, and inspiration. The girl read something inquisitively until she put a sliced loaf and a loaf of whole grain flour bread into the basket. On the way out at the checkout, she did not fuss and behaved confident. It didn't seem like someone who was used to stealing and had never known other living conditions could behave this way. Where did you learn all these tricks to choose the right products? I don't know, it's like something is triggered in my head. It would be better if my memory told me the name and not how to understand bread and milk. They entered the apartment quietly. The children were sleeping peacefully. Only the lamp in the hall cast faint reflections of light on the walls. Among the homeless people, they nicknamed me Helen because you seem to find me consonant with this name. You call me that too, since you decided to invite me to visit. And yet, do not consider my request impudent. Can I take a shower with you? It was always inconvenient for me to wash in our semi-barracks behind a screen. Fetch water from a water pump around the corner, heated on the electric stove, for which we always get charged by the police. What kind of wash is this? Alice brought a large terry towel from the bedroom, gave us pajamas from her personal supplies, and showed us how to use the gas water heater. There was not a shadow of doubt in her soul that pseudo-Helen would want to take something from them, take advantage of her trust and deceive her. After the shower, the girl came to the kitchen, where Alice had already made her tea with milk and a sandwich with sausage, which her children loved so much. In the light of the orange lamp, the owner of the house changed her mind once again. Shining after the hot water, with her hair flowing over her shoulders, with a deep look in her swamp-colored eyes, Helen began to look even older. Sleep was coming to both of them, and although Alice had to get up at 7 a.m. to take her son to school and her daughter to kindergarten, she was overcome with curiosity. I wanted to ask the girl further if she remembered anything at all about her mysterious. Anne stretched out in bed sweetly, like a graceful cat. Freedom of movement, freedom of action, freedom of calls and messages on your loved one's cell phone. That nasty Angela no longer stands between them. It was necessary to name this oligarch's daughter so ornately. She, Angela, is a beloved daughter, the wife of a business partner, a successful young woman. So where is she now? It's cool that she finally came up with an idea to remove this upstart from sight. She and her beloved had been making eyes at each other since school. How upset she was when Leo was sent to study in London, at some economics academy. At graduation, they danced so languidly and tenderly to the envy of all their classmates. Rumors have already spread around the school that they are a couple, and here is such a surprise with this study abroad. Angela didn't waste any time with her studies at that moment either. Two avid business partners own shopping and entertainment centers, restaurants, and supermarkets around the city. Yes, they don't have London or New York here, but an ordinary town. But by local standards, the fortune of the owners of all this wealth is colossal in terms of the number of zeros. Such a cool business should be in good hands. So Angela, as everyone around her called her, went to university after school and graduated from the Department of Food Expertise. I learned from the appearance of sausage, cheese, chocolate, and all other goodies to almost never be mistaken about their quality. Leo returned from London, a serious, thoughtful young man. The father had already lost his hands in anticipation that after some time he would be able to transfer all the affairs to his legal heir. Angela's father was older than him, despite the opportunity to receive any treatment he wanted in the best clinics in the world. His health was getting worse and worse. He did his best to involve his daughter in the business, who turned out to be a smart and wise assistant. Once, when Leo was still studying in the UK, a serious conversation took place between the two. "Sergio, my friend, you and I have known each other for so many years. Moreover, we trust each other. How would you look at my plans for my son and your daughter? The couple would be beautiful. We would pool our capital in the name of future grandchildren. Yes, I will only be glad if everything works out for our offspring. They are not the first, nor are they the last, to seal the business with marital ties. I think that in our commercial times, it is better to enter into marriage with people in your own circle so that unnecessary surprises do not arise later." Both interlocutors did not forget about their idea, and when Leo, inspired by his academic success, returned to his hometown, the two families and the men had already discussed their plans with their wives, received full approval, and all the time they casually began to organize picnics, parties, and receptions. So, willy-nilly, Angela and Leo were forced to constantly intersect. The young people themselves were also not stupid and intellectually approve of their parents' far-reaching ideas. They, of course, did not feel great and bright love for each other, but for a marriage of convenience. Such love is not required. The main thing is that they sympathized with each other, did not experience obvious antipathy, did not keep the gun in their pockets when their loved ones communicated. The level of intelligence and development, similar interest did their job. To begin with, they went to a restaurant for lunch a couple of times, to a fashion exhibition, and a touring performance of the capital's theater. A couple of months later, Leo invited the girl to a romantic dinner where he proposed marriage to her and presented her with a stylish ring in an elegant velvet box of rich burgundy color. Today we drank to the possible future of marital happiness and decided on the date of the reception in honor of the official announcement of the engagement. Angela paid tribute and drank a couple of glasses of wine. For courage, Leo destroyed 200 grams of whiskey and then decided, "Angela, sorry for asking, but I would like to know. Have you already had experience with men?" Angela, not at all embarrassed, simply answered, "I had a 2-year student romance with a guy from a parallel group. We were 20 years old, who at this age only reads poetry and looks at the moon." Well, I wasn't a monk in England either. I lived for 3 years with a student from another college. We both knew this was a no-strings affair. She is an educated, well-read person, a loyal comrade. But they parted without tears or both knew from the very beginning that someday this would certainly happen. After this frank conversation, it somehow happened by itself that they ended up at Angela's apartment. She had been living separately with her parents for 2 years. Leo looked questioningly into her eyes. She nodded. Both understood everything without words. You have your whole life ahead of you. It was still necessary to check whether they were suitable for each other. This night, for the two of them, did not become something transcendental, fabulous and magical. Mutual sympathy, youth, and easy interest became helpers. Even then, the girl thought that it turns out that this happens. What Leo thought, no one will ever know, but he wasn't particularly disappointed either. The reception in honor of the engagement of the two heirs, both of whom were only children in the family, was organized at the highest level in the best country restaurant. There's hundreds of guests. The sparkle of diamonds and emeralds on the ladies, expensive suits and watches on their gentlemen, representatives of the press of all stripes. From the city press to the yellow press, Anne was sitting in the beauty salon and was bored. The cue for hairstyling was still not coming. He and the girls gathered in a cafe in the city center to amaze everyone with their beauty. Over the years of Leo's studies, it has become even brighter, in a sort of little femme fatale. I got bored and got married. Why such a verdict? Yes, the husband turned out to be a promising scientist, but such a nerd at heart. He sits with his snowflakes, delving into old manuscripts all day long. Where has it been seen that in the age of the internet, a person collects information from ancient manuscripts? A doll like her should be regularly brought into the world so that other men will be breathtaking with envy. And he kept repeating, darling, you will soon be able to be proud of your new surname. International recognition and fabulous fees will rain down on me." Anne wouldn't have been with him for even a month, but he was surprisingly handsome and very good, and he preferred he appeared on the marital bed. He preferred to sit in libraries and then at his desk half the night. Some academy gave him a personal grant for all expenses, so he was not burdened with caring for his daily bread. It was enough to live with a young wife. Not luxurious, but not poor either. Anne dreamed of a money river, endless and deep, so that she could touch it with greedy hands and lips when she wanted to drink in wealth. Hold his material confirmations in your knees, hands with long nails, with a perfect manicure. She ran away from her learned husband as soon as she met an arrogant, young entrepreneur at a bachelorette party, wasting money left and right in a nightclub. Her husband had just rushed off to the library of a neighboring city. There they found something interesting for him, and he stayed there overnight. So she agreed to easily and simply accompany the visiting businessman to his hotel room. The night went terribly, but she did not go home empty-handed after this crumpled date. A generous but inexperienced lover gave her such a sum for a couple of hours of communication, which her husband did not give her for expenses in 6 months. He made it clear that this meeting was accidental and there would be no continuation. Anne thought deeply. She needs to find a chosen one, so that as a man, he is not much worse than his current husband and is not constrained in funds and is not greedy. He would be happy to care for and cherish the woman he loves. It would, undoubtedly, be better if she received the status of his legal wife, but we still have to work hard on this. In the pile of magazines lying on the nightstand in the beauty salon, something on the cover of one of them seemed painfully familiar to her. She grabbed a copy of the local tabloid press and laughed loudly for the whole room to hear, and then heatedly whispered in the ear of her friend sitting next to, "Look, the goldfish has returned from London, and I also found a girl, all in wearing glasses. But first, I need to show my first love so that I can see what a woman with a capital W should look like." Anne's insidious plans were not destined to come true immediately. The fathers decided that it would be nice if their children went on not one trip, but 2. First, they will go to the Dominican Republic with its tropical delights, plunge into the turquoise Atlantic Ocean, walk hand in hand on the velvet and white sand, and admire the local flora and fauna. And at the same time, they will get used to the idea that immediately after their return, there will be a big, luxurious wedding in the city. The position obliges, and after the wedding ceremony, you can go to a more civilized Europe for a couple of months to finally cement the resulting marriage union with your feelings. For now, they will be able to cope with affairs without the airs of a large kingdom. 5 years ago, a young promising specialist appeared in the office of the bride's father, whom the elderly businessman could not get enough of. Ben was brilliantly educated, received his honors diploma here in Boston, and was a native of their city. He gave up a career in the capital for the following reason. His elderly parents lived in his homeland. They already required constant monitoring. They themselves did not cope well, even with everyday chores. A late child is the one and only. His father and mother still found the strength to help him graduate from the lyceum and get an education, and then they immediately gave up. We sat in front of the TV all day and even almost stopped going outside. Ben was recommended by an old university friend. A rare guy. Hire him as your personal assistant. You won't regret it. The fathers decided to transfer management of the holding into the hands of their children. I have completely different plans. Sergio denied. One will not interfere with the other. No one is offering you to immediately make him the general director of the entire company. Let it spin around near you. You will see it there. The owners of the holding have long since fully trusted their deputy general director. He received this position from them a year ago. While the children were traveling and getting used to their new family life, after the wedding, Ben bore all the management burdens and coped with them. I didn't get bored until the newlyweds and Anne were in town. She perfected her appearance again and again. Secular gossip reported that the marriage of Leo and Angela was officially registered. But when could such a trivial obstacle stop her? He will be her husband. We just have to wait. Young people returned from Europe sunburned, cheerful, and rested. Both were impatient to get back. Their relationship with each other was smooth, reminiscent of friendship. There was no rush to give birth to the baby yet. We decided to postpone this important issue and prepared the meeting with Leo as a strategic operation. She found out where the young businessman goes for lunch on weekdays and put on her most stylish outfit, knowing full well that in it, and with fashionable, almost invisible makeup, she would be irresistible. The squabble between her and the waitress attracted the attention of the entire catering establishment. At that moment, when Leo just sat down at one of the tables, it played out like clockwork. She imperceptibly nudged the waitress by the arm, and now a cup of chocolate was flying onto Anne's snow-white suit. What have you done? Girl, do you even know how much such a jacket from the latest collection could cost? You won't be able to pay for it in a year with your meager salary. Leo involuntarily turned his head towards the frightening lady and was stunned by how wonderfully beautiful she was. Anne also looked in his direction, instantly stopped educating the waitress, and smiled welcomingly. Leo, is that you? A minute later, they were already sitting at the same table. Leo was amazed by the changes that had happened to his school crush. Well-groomed, regal, alluring, mysterious, not like his so calm, always even in mood, standard classic wife. A fire burned inside Anne, promising unearthly pleasure. And he fell for me. The money hunter thought predatorily. We must not miss this chance and make the most of it. But first, a little teasing. Oh, I was glad to meet you, but alas, I'm in a hurry. I have an appointment, and I also have to go home and change clothes. My suit is hopelessly ruined. Such a trifle is not worth your worries. Anne, where can I buy exactly this? Let's meet tomorrow and correct this oversight of the careless waitress. The golden carp took the bait without any doubt. Leo was also impatiently waiting for the next meeting with Anne. The conscience in Leo's soul didn't even make a sound. Ben couldn't help himself. He liked the boss's daughter. No, such a definition would not even be correct. He had loved her for a long time and hopelessly. The young woman passed him by as if by an empty place. They greeted him politely when they met and immediately forgot about his existence, with the look of a loving man. Ben noted that there was no real warmth between Angela and Leo. Dry cultural politeness, a tribute to the idea of preserving and increasing the business that was once upon a time long ago, before the start of all the marriage processes and even the engagement. Ben even had an impulse to open up to Angela to tell her about his feelings, but it was on that day that he became an accidental witness to a conversation between the bosses. Ezio then say, "Just imagine, my friend, the daughter of one of our competitors married some beggar, and her dad didn't even bat an eye. Let her choose," they say, with her heart. What sincere feelings can there be in our business? I believe that it is with such views on life that you will never build a solid business. Hearing this tirade, Ben immediately changed his mind about telling Angela something, loved her silently, to himself, not paying attention to other beauties. Although, with his courageous appearance, the entire female cohort in the team cast inviting glance. Thank God, at least no one knew about his heartfelt aspirations. They said all sorts of things about his heart being broken by some beauty. Leo and Anne were drowning in an ocean of some unearthly passion. In fact, Anne herself did not rush into the pool of all these sentimental gadgets. She set a trap. Leo never went on a date without an expensive gift. Her entire apartment was now filled with luxurious bouquets of flowers. Incredibly expensive birthday outfits appeared in the wardrobe, a small, elegant car of astronomical cost. And even with technical tuning, there was also a stunningly beautiful stole from Somalia. Leo was a generous lover, made excellent money, and had a personal bank account, the contents of which his father was not interested in. Let the boy have pocket money, and acutely realized she did not want to remain in the role of the second woman in Leo's life. After all, her partner still never stayed overnight with her or in another fashionable hotel, but went to Angela, and she even suspected that he never fulfilled his marital duty at home. Angela lived in complete ignorance. My husband was always there at work, at corporate receptions, at social city events, as he should be, and how he spent his time at other times did not bother her at all. There was a secret inside Angela. After returning from Europe, already being a legal wife, she somehow found herself at work in the same elevator with the deputy general director of Ben. He stood silently, without making a sound, facing his boss's daughter, and he looked at her in such a way that she got goosebumps. I shouldn't think like that, but you can't fool yourself. If only instead of Leo, my husband, was this charismatic, charming, very smart, and always very polite man. Why did fate decide in such a way that I should continue the dynasty in my father's business and not follow my heart? On the top floor, Angela got out of the elevator and went to her office, dispelling the confusion and magic of Ben, who had so unexpectedly captivated her along the way. To be honest, she liked this young man from the very first moment they met. Remembered her father's favorite motto, "Position obliges." Angela did not forget that meeting in the elevator and pulled out these memories from the nooks and crannies of her memory when she was alone. Her father increasingly shifted business tasks onto her shoulders. They constantly crossed paths with Ben at planning meetings, but sat far from each other. Angela didn't even notice that her husband's schedule began to increasingly include overnight business trips. Their cold marriage of convenience did not bring simple human happiness to either of them. Angela couldn't even remember the last time she and her husband were intimate. At this time, Anne was preparing to give Leo an ultimatum. Either she or that nasty Angela. Leo increasingly disappeared with his mistress, sometimes for the entire week. She decided that the coming days, coinciding with the annual holiday, were just the right time to talk. Leo promised that they would fly to the resort for all 3 days under the guise of a business meeting with Southern partners. The trip to the sea turned out to be extremely romantic. There was only one thing that upset Leo. Anne didn't want to spend time in bed. Everything pulled her either to a restaurant or to a new fashionable chain cafe, where they cooked mind-blowing, even generous purchases at the local shopping and entertainment center did not make her more flexible. And the man was puzzled by her behavior, which smacked of either coldness or indifference. Towards night, after a hearty dinner in the most expensive restaurant at the resort, Anne laid down in bed with him, side by side, but did not let him near her, and started a conversation. "Hey, don't you think it's time for us to somehow decide on our relationship? I'm not going to spend my whole life on the sidelines as your mistress. My girl, you know what our marriage with Angela is based on. Divorce is impossible. We are the management center of a huge holding company. If he is gone, then there will be no more opportunities to pamper you like that. But what should I do in this case?" Anne asked angrily, not expecting such an obvious refusal right away. "I am the eternal number 2 in the shadow of your Angela. This won't happen." That night, for the first time, Leo was never allowed to see her. He flew home angry. Anne, sitting next to her, did not remove the mask of offended and insulted from her face. Both went home in different taxis. A week after that ill-fated trip, Anne already had a new plan ready in her head. If Angela cannot be moved, she should simply be erased from the face of the earth. She didn't even care that such ideas openly smacked of crime. Anne was still furious. Leo decided to take a time out and give his precious lover time to calm down and wisely accept his arguments. Therefore, Nothing suspicious even occurred to him when his wife disappeared without returning from work one evening. Having learned that Angela, whom he devotedly loved, had disappeared, Ben could not find a place for himself and decided to conduct his own investigation. It had long seemed to him that Leo had been behaving extremely strangely in recent months. He tells his father and his partner that he will be late in the office with documents accumulated like a snowball, and he mysteriously disappears as soon as the two companions leave for home. Unable to resist, he decided to play a homegrown private follow Leo, who, once behind the walls of the holding, didn't really hide. Ben found out that he had a mistress within a couple of days. Moreover, spying on the boss's heir turned into an obsession for Ben. He recorded the facts of Leo's adultery with pedantry and meticulousness, expensive spending on gifts, the sweet couple's trips to restaurants, trips to country clubs, dates in secluded hotels. He really wanted to collect his collection of photographs, and he took plenty of pictures of Leo and Anne from different angles in order to dump all this dirt in front of his superiors. The only thing that stopped him, he did not know the conditions under which this marriage was concluded. What was confusing was that Angela remained completely unperturbed. Having met her alone in the elevator, he tried to understand her inner state. He even scolded himself later for not taking his eyes off her, trying to shine through her like an... She was absolutely the same calm girl as usual. She did not at all resemble a woman suffering from her husband's treacherous infidelities. The last straw in Ben's patience with Leo's bad behavior was the disappearance of Angela. Everyone in the office saw that the young woman took her bag in the evening and hurried to the exit of the parking lot, got into her car and drove away. Angela did not show up at home that day. Leo sounded the alarm only the next day. Just that evening, when his wife disappeared somewhere, as if through the earth, he went on a date. The mistress again turned into a wax cat, looked devotedly into her eyes, and insisted that she understood everything and agreed to everything, as long as her beloved was near. The day after the mysterious disappearance of his daughter, the businessman had no time for jokes. He loved her madly, although he tried not to show it to anyone. The entire security service of the holding company was raised to its feet. The police joined in, and the father involved private detectives he knew, to no avail. All city and regional hospitals and morgues have already been checked. Sergio's people with Angela's photo looked through all the unidentified female corpses. A week later, on a short walk near the park, they found Angela's car with a bag lying forlornly in the backseat. To everyone's surprise, no barbarity was committed against this property. Sergio was going crazy, and Ben was tossing between duty to his boss and internal doubts, all the time asking himself, how will I show Sergio a photo of his son-in-law with his mistress? This will also lead to a quarrel between longtime business partners and a split in a huge company. And yet Ben decided, I came to the boss's office on weak legs. He would most likely lose his place in the holding. He didn't care, as long as Angela was found. May she only be alive and well. There was a decisive knock on the door. I immediately saw that the boss had lost a lot of weight and had lost a lot of weight in recent days. Oh, what do you want, Ben? I have no time for work right now. I think you should see this. Ben fanned out all the pictures he had taken while following Leo's movements on the table. The businessman picked up the incriminating evidence against his son-in-law, went through all the photographs one by one, becoming darker than a cloud. I have a feeling that Angela's disappearance is somehow connected with this woman, Ben added. Why did you start all this surveillance? Did they dig under their bosses, wanted to dig up something exclusive and ruin our reputation? I love your daughter. I didn't dig or look for anything. I just want her to be happy. For some time now, Leo's behavior began to make me suspicious. So I rushed to find out what and how. You can fire me now. Why didn't they come to me with all this abomination earlier? Angela seemed completely serene to me. I did not consider it possible to disturb her peace. The man once again looked at Ben from under his brows, then pressed the button to call the secretary. The head of the security service come to me and tell Oliver that I would like to see him in my office. Ben was taken aback. Previously, the younger Sergio always went to his partner himself when he had questions, and all corporate meetings always took place in the meeting room next to Oliver's office. You can be free, Ben. I will inform you additionally about my decision regarding You're non-workinish. The conversation between the two oldest partners was difficult. But first, Sergio showed Oliver all the photos of Ben's work. Without saying where he got these materials from, he asked directly, "Did you know that your son is recklessly having an affair with his mistress?" "Oh, no, this was unknown to me. If I had known, I would have tried to stop this disgrace." The head of the security service knocked on the door. The men focused on developing a search plan for Angela due to newly discovered circumstances. Anne was carefree drinking coffee and chatting with a friend on the phone when someone knocked on the door of her apartment. She stretched sweetly, smelled the silk robe, and coquettishly asked, "Darling, is this how you decided to joke? You have a key, don't you? Open up. And Leo sent us to you." The woman instantly opened the door. Two hefty guys with either military or athletic bearing burst into the apartment. One of them asked sharply, "Where is Angela? We warn you that the next person to knock on your door will be the police." Anne batted her eyelashes indignantly. "I don't know who Angela is. It's some kind of mistake." The second of the uninvited guests dumped photographs on the coffee table in front of her. "We will still prove that you have something to do with her disappearance. And then you will face a much more serious article of the criminal code than now." In 1 minute, the beauty Anne, hiding her face in horror, turned into a pitiful semblance of a femme fatale. She began to speak awkwardly. "I only asked the guys at the bar to intimidate her. But these idiots overdid it and hit me on the head from behind with something heavy. When I gave them money for the work, they said they were confused. They took her by the arms to the waiting room at the station and sat her down on an empty chair. After the injury, she did not lose consciousness, but she became somewhat lethargic and strange. The guys showed her the phone, on which they recorded the entire conversation and her confession. It's better for you to come to the police yourself and confess as the customer. If Angela's father takes care of you, everything will be much worse." Further searches went easier. The holding security service turned the entire station upside down and came to the lair of the homeless. When they saw Helen's photo, they didn't refuse. "Yes, we found such a young lady at the station," and dragged her to us. The doctor, Baba Zoe, nursed the girl and treated her as best she could. But she never remembered who she was. Then everyone en masse taught a new craft, how not to get lost in a big city. They took the clothes, lost the expensive ones, and sold them at the clothing market. Watches and jewelry also went there. Helen didn't have her phone with her. Apparently, those who hit it on the head took the expensive toy. A few days ago, she did not return to spend the night from the fishery, where she usually worked part-time. So I sorted out vegetables and fruits by weight in the back room of supermarkets. There is such activity that is temporary. If you look decent, they can trust you. The holdings employees went to all the places where homeless people sometimes try to earn at least a little money honestly. In 2 places, they immediately recognized Angela, and in one store the employee at the checkout said, "I know this girl. She's always so polite and cultured. She often buys groceries from us. Sometimes she comes alone, sometimes with an older woman, or with younger brothers and sister. The servicemen were surprised. Maybe this is not our Angela. They all live in that 5-story house. We just won't name the apartment. You can ask the grannies in the yard." The cashier asked after them. Alice could not get enough of the fact that one dark autumn night she met Helen in the courtyard of the house. The girl turned out to be a golden assistant, clearly well-educated and well-read. She perfectly found a common language with the children, who listened to all her stories with their mouths open in delight. Stephen was hugging Helen by the side of her leg and did not want to let her go. Alice could now safely leave home to work with her students. The academic year was gaining momentum. Many school children limped in English language and literature. There was no shortage of clients. Alice went to the supermarket to buy some cakes. Today, Helen and the children will have a sweet party with some interesting film. The cashier at the exit looked at her strangely, as if she wanted to say something, and then remained silent. Alice thought that she must have smudged her mascara when she rubbed her eye with her fist. The road to their entrance was blocked by a motorcade of expensive cars. Entirely elite foreign cars, hefty, with shiny mother-of-pearl sides. Men in formal suits, white shirts, and ties stood near the cars. One of them was clearly very nervous. Ben asked to go with the security service to the place where Angela was supposedly now located, so pitifully that the heart of the stern businessman trembled. "But let me be there without any tricks." Sergio recently came up with the idea that he and Oliver were mistaken with their strategy of a marriage of convenience between the children of two high-ranking families. Leo, after his affair was discovered, was hanging out under the police station where his mistress was in custody. Ben, on the contrary, did not go home until the security service brought new news to the chief in the evenings about how the search for Angela was progressing. You cannot command your heart to love. It is beyond the control of human will. Alice walked towards her apartment as if through a gauntlet, but stopped when she heard her neighbor's voice. "Yes, there she is. It's the girl you're looking for who's staying in her house right now. So who is it that all these expensive Jeeps with tinted windows are after?" So I knew that our Helen was a difficult girl. "Look what a retinue has appeared." She turned to the men and said, "One person will go with me. You scare children with this command. I go." The same handsome man who seemed to be the most nervous stepped forward. The head of the security service grinned. "Well, go ahead, Mr. Deputy General Director. Maybe you will be of more use." Helen opened the door and saw an unfamiliar man behind Alice. He rushed towards her and grabbed her in his arm. "My God. Angela, are you alive? How glad I am to see you. We all almost went crazy when you disappeared." A click in the head, a short flash, a silver elevator with a stylish design. There are two people in the office, a man and a woman, and the woman feels so good that this man is nearby. Angela remembered who she was, how they parked the car near the kiosk to buy a bottle of cool mineral water, how someone quietly approached from behind, as if sneak, and then pain and failure. Angela stepped towards Ben and hugged his strong shoulders. "Oh, I'm glad to see you too, Ben. I am very happy." After the mysterious story of Angela's disappearance, drastic changes took place in the city's richest holding company. Sergio, who experienced the recent events very hard, completely handed over the reins of the company to his partner, Mr. Oliver. "I even sold him my stake. They say at a reduced cost as compensation for moral damage. You won't understand them, the rich." Oliver's son, Leo, lives in a town next to the colony where his mistress, Anne, is serving her sentence. He started drinking. Recently, he was even seen hanging out with two local alcoholic celebrities, Henry and Alec. Anne herself does not react to her beloved's feat. She is having an affair with one of the prison workers. Why does she need Leo? Now we need to look for a more profitable option for ourselves. Sergio did his best for his daughter. Anne will have to stay in a correctional facility for another 6 long years. Ben and Angela recently got married and set off to conquer Korea with its beauty. No luxury hotels, a tent, a fire, soup in a pot, tea with berries and a truly loved one nearby. Here it is, happiness. Sergio became involved in charity work. The first creation was a school for talented children from disadvantaged families. The director of the school is now English and literature teacher Alice Johnson. Her youngest son, Stefan, learned to read early. He sits for hours in his mother's library at work. Recently, Alice took away a volume of Maupassant from him with the words, "It's too early for you to read, my young admirer of good literature." Alice herself has not yet found a man after her heart. There is no equal to Dennis, and therefore it is better to be alone than with just anyone. Everyone learned their own lessons from the fact that fate once confronted them in this world. Everyone drew their own conclusions from what happened. Life is a motley thing.